Okay, listen up, my friends, because I have a really fun story for you. A few years into my business, I hired a business coach for public speaking and often served as a reference for that coach. One day, I received a call from my guest, Rhonda Sher. She was considering hiring the same coach and wanted to know more about my experiences and what it was like to work with them. When I asked Rhonda what she did for a living, she told me that she optimized LinkedIn profiles for small business owners and service providers. I was immediately interested and asked Rhonda to tell me more. Well, by the end of that initial call, I had hired Rhonda to completely overhaul and optimize my LinkedIn profile, and we have stayed colleagues and cherished connections ever since. I was honored when Rhonda agreed to review the LinkedIn section of my book, Your Mid-Career GPS: 4 Steps to Figuring Out What's Next. And I am excited to bring you my conversation today with LinkedIn expert and your connections consultant, Rhonda Sher. Rhonda is here to talk to you about what you need to be doing on LinkedIn to grow your network, make better professional connections, and where you can be adding more professional value on LinkedIn. Plus, Rhonda is going to share one of her favorite tips and mine too. You will not want to miss. So let's get started. Hello, my friends. This is the Mid-Career GPS podcast, and I'm your host, John Nerrill. I help mid-career professionals find a job they love or love the job they have using my proven 4-step formula. 2024 is quickly proving to be a year where networking is more important than ever. Whether you're actively job seeking or looking to build your executive presence, this conversation will absolutely help you. Now, at the end of the interview, Rhonda will share information about her upcoming boot camp that she is hosting called Perfect Your Profile. It will be held from March 12th to the 15th. You can check the show notes or visit perfectyourprofile.com to learn more about Rhonda's upcoming boot camp. Now, if you've ever wondered how you can optimize your LinkedIn profile, gain more visibility and traction, I mean this, Rhonda is the best out there to help you. But you'll find that out more as you listen to our conversation. I have continually touched base and worked with Rhonda throughout the years. I always lean on her advice. And I want to celebrate with you that I was recently recognized and acknowledged as a top career development coaching voice on LinkedIn. And that is due in part because of how Rhonda teaches me how to show up on LinkedIn. And in this conversation, she's going to teach you how you can show up more on LinkedIn. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to someone I truly appreciate and value. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Rhonda Sher. Hey there, Rhonda. Welcome to the podcast. I've been waiting for this conversation for a while.
I'm so happy to be here, John. Love seeing you and love listening to your podcast.
I love seeing you too. Thank you so very much. All right, Rhonda, I want my listeners to get to know you right off the bat. You have this incredible story about your husband who became your husband, who then became your husband. Please tell us about that.
So when I got married, I was pretty young. And what was interesting is, you got to remember this was 1980. And I grew up with a mom who my dad did not want my mother to work because in his mind, that meant that he couldn't support the family. So when Bob and I got married, he said he had one request. I said, "What's that?" He said, "Please don't make more money than me." Well, the funny part of that is we have two daughters and they are now 32, 34. And if anybody ever said that to them, I would tell them to run, not walk. Okay. But, that was a different era. And so we were married for 28 years. And, for a long time it was great. And then it wasn't. So we amicably divorced. But at the time that we divorced, it was kind of just a series of events that happened. My mom passed away within that same very short window. Our house got short sailed. I had a cancer scare. The kids were empty nesting. And nobody was hiring speakers. So here I was, I'm this, speaker, trainer, LinkedIn. And guess what? Nobody was hiring. I thought, I'm going to be a supermarket greeter. That's going to be me. And and then I thought to myself, I have a superpower just like everybody else does. I know how to use LinkedIn. So I decided that I was going to go get my life insurance license. And what I did was I started to think, well, who has my client but isn't competing with me? So I knew that it was the life insurance. It was actually the people that were selling mortgages because I was selling life insurance. So using LinkedIn, I started reaching out to the mortgage brokers and set up appointments. And within the first 6 weeks, John, I was generating $6,000 a month using LinkedIn as my lead source. At the end of that year, I was generating six figures. And I figured out two things. Number one, really did not like selling life insurance. That wasn't what I was meant to do. And number two, I had actually created a system that anybody could use. So fast forward, and now we're in February of 2016, and I end up remarrying my ex-husband. So when we got married the second time, Bob said to me, I have one request. I said, okay, what's that? He said, please make more money than me. Well, believe it or not, I was able to retire him. He now works for me. So 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, he actually retired from his corporate job. And he's now working with me. So I like to say I have a husband, a husband, didn't have to change my name. The kids are ours. And what I gave birth to is what I call the Sher method, which is really the system that I use and my clients use to generate anywhere from 2 to 10 to 20 appointments a week and literally pick up all that money that they're leaving on the table. So that's really the backstory. And I haven't looked back, and we're coming up on 8 years this month of being remarried. So we call it 44 with 6 off for good behavior.
Oh, I love that story. I love that story about you and Bob. And as I shared in the introduction, I am so honored to be one of your clients. You have taught me so much about LinkedIn. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on today, because you found a way to leverage a platform that gave you success. And for anybody
Absolutely.
that's listening out there, people will use LinkedIn for what they need. So if they're looking to build their network, find a new job, grow their thought leadership presence, or they are building a business and they know their ideal client lives on LinkedIn as opposed to one of the other social media platforms. Rhonda, what are some of the things in general that you know from all of your experience with LinkedIn that you believe people miss or don't do quote unquote right when they're building their presence on LinkedIn? Just give us one of those things that perhaps you think people miss.
I think they treat LinkedIn as if it was a resume, and it's really not. It's where they're getting checked out. So, one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they don't use it to tell people who they are, why they should work with them or hire them, if that's the case, what makes them different, who they serve, and even more importantly, what's the call to action? How many profiles have you looked at and you don't even know how to reach them because I don't put their contact info on there, or you have no idea what it is that they do? You read the profile and you're like, what does this person do? I have no idea. I know a lot about them, but it doesn't make me want to do business with them. So I think it's the branding and the positioning and the messaging where a lot of people are just leaving that money on the table.
Staying in line with that, let's talk about the about section on the LinkedIn profile for a moment. A lot of times when clients come to me and I start taking a look at their LinkedIn profile, I may see a few sentences, maybe a paragraph. It's written in the third person. It's bland. It's not interesting at all. How can people leverage their about section differently to your point where people are actually going to stay on their profile and check them out a little more?
Well, the most important way is those first two or three lines, because you have to hit those two little words, see more, to be able to see the entire about section. So, in those first two or three lines, you want to get whoever is visiting your profile to know who it is that you serve, what it is that you do, so that they want to keep reading. And the biggest mistake that I see is outside of doing it in third person is that every sentence starts with the word I. And the truth is, John, nobody cares about you until they know what you can do for them, right?
Hmm.
And the other thing that's interesting about the about section is you got to remember there's people out there like myself that are the baby boomers, right? So we've got our readers, and we need to see things that are a little bit bigger. And I used to joke about my mom, right? And I'd say, why does she have a pair of readers in every room? And now I understand, because
Right.
wherever you go. But the truth is, you want to see it where it's easy to read. There's sections. So these are my referral partners. These are, a couple of reasons why people work with me. These are the results that I deliver, right? This is who I work with. So make it easy to read. Use bullet points. Step into the shoes of the person that you're looking to attract, and write it from the vantage point that you know that they're going to be reading it.
One of the things I like about what you just shared with us there is that it is about the results. Who are you helping? What have you done for them? What have you achieved for your current or previous employers? What, to your point at the beginning, what's your superpower? What's the thing that makes you stand out over everyone else? The about section has, you'll know this better than I will. It's something like 2,800 characters.
2,600.
2,600. Okay. That's a lot. Should people be filling up their entire about section with 2,600 characters?
If you have the information and it's relevant, use it. Absolutely. No. Now, if you're a financial professional, you're going to have to put certain disclosures on there anyway. There are
Mhm.
certain things that you're going to have to put. You want to make every word and every sentence count. And you want to create curiosity. You want to involve the reader. And one of the things that I've noticed lately, there's kind of a trend. And what I've noticed is that people are telling stories, and stories are fine. But at the same time, in weaving that story, I really want to know what you do. I want to be engaged. I have a client she's amazing. So she's a chef that was trained actually not professionally in a culinary institute, but by her mother, right? She's also she has a television show. She does work with corporations, teaching, healthy kinds of stuff. She wears a number of different hats. And in her about section, all of that is woven in. So there's a little bit of humor where she talks about how she learned what she does. Then she talks about the different areas that she works in, and it's all related. Everything is related to health. So whether you want to learn how to cook, go to a cooking show, you're an employer and you want to bring in some kind of a program for your employees that's health related, or you're looking for a speaker, or you're looking for a coach. So it all weaves together. And as you land in that about section, you're reading something that really pulls you in and engages you with a call to action, depending upon what part of the profile speaks to you.
Well said. And while LinkedIn doesn't or shouldn't necessarily serve in the same vein as what a resume does, I do like to think of LinkedIn as having one very big commonality with a resume. And that is if it doesn't grab someone's attention within the first 7 seconds, they're gone. They're off your profile, they're on to somebody else. So, Rhonda, one of the biggest questions I get from my clients is what could they do with the banner or the section behind their headshot? A lot of them tend to have that default banner, or they'll go to Canva and they'll pick one of those generic templates. And then you end up seeing that with like 15 people as you're scrolling around and everything. One of the things I remember from our work together was that you shared with me that the banner, the space behind the headshot, is prime real estate to tell people what you do. Where
It's a
or how?
branding space.
Yeah.
It's a branding space. One of the things that people really don't do that they should is make sure they look at it on a mobile device because it looks different when you're looking at it on your phone versus your desktop. So you want to make sure, number one, that it actually doesn't have too much stuff because if it's too busy, nobody's going to read it. But
Mhm.
here's a really cool little tip that you can do. Put a QR code on it. So if you want to send somebody to watch a video of you, to get a download, send them somewhere, put a QR code. That's a really easy thing with an arrow saying, want to learn more about my upcoming masterclass? And then they just put it right there. So, and you can keep switching your banner as often as you
Oh,
want.
yeah. Those are some great tips. And again, to that point about the branding statement is what do you want it to say about you? If you're actively job seeking, what do you want a future employer to know about you? And those are some great things. I really like the idea of the QR code, but I will tell you, I didn't share this with you earlier. I had been changing around my LinkedIn banner. I think I went through 10 different iterations because it wouldn't render correctly on my mobile device. And I thought, this just looks like crap. I can't put this out there. So I had a little entrepreneurial frustration trying to figure out what
Did
that
you
was going
use
to look like
Canva?
on
Because
a mobile.
Canva's got some amazing templates on there.
Yeah, I use Canva
Um,
all the time. I love it. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And you can always go to Fiverr. There's some really great people on Fiverr that can do your banners for you. I'm a big fan of what I like to call your own personal focus group.
Mhm.
So I would just get a bunch of people that you know and ask them, looking at this, does this tell you what I do? Does it grab your attention? Is my branding consistent? Really ask people what they think. And, especially if they're in your target market, right? I think that's a really cool thing to do. And do it as well with your headline and even your headshot.
Those are all great tips. For anybody that's listening, I hope you're safely capturing some notes, or you're making a point when you are in a safe space to go back and take some notes of this, because Rhonda is absolutely one of the best that is out there when it comes to leveraging LinkedIn in this way. So, Rhonda, let's shift the conversation here for a minute because I often hear from a lot of my clients that they think they should be spending time in LinkedIn groups, and they should be in those groups for networking purposes or sharing thought leadership. And from my lens, I don't see LinkedIn groups to be as active as they once were several years ago. What's your take on LinkedIn groups right now?
I agree. I don't really spend much time in groups. There are some groups on there that are very active. Now, there is a huge advantage with groups, and that is if you're in a group and you're really active in that group, right? It's a great way to be able to connect with more people because you can directly message the people in the group, especially if you've hit your maximum, number of connections. Um, but having said that, the best way to really interact with LinkedIn is outside of the groups, just knowing who it is that you want to be working with. And again, Facebook groups have a lot more interaction than LinkedIn groups do, but there are some that are really active that do very, very well. It just depends on which one it is and
Hmm.
how active you're going to be. The main thing is you don't want to go in there and be selling. Nobody wants that, spray and pray. You really want to go in there and be a contributor, right? You really want to bring value wherever you go. But I agree with you, John. They just don't have what they used to.
Hmm. And to your point, Rhonda, it's one of those things where when people do go on LinkedIn, I oftentimes will see some people be with very good intentions. Just to clarify, they'll come across as being a little desperate or they'll be a little needy and they'll be like, hey, I'm looking for work. If you know any connections, and they've never done anything to build that know, like, and trust factor, or they haven't optimized their profile. And so then it gets lost. And when it gets lost, they get frustrated. And when they get frustrated, they get disappointed. And then they feel like their job search has no traction whatsoever. So I really appreciate your whole point about be a great contributor, add value, get them over to your profile, and then let that relationship build from there.
And one of the ways to do that, believe it, believe it or not, is actually by commenting on other people's posts. Because if you have a good profile, then if you start commenting, and there are lots of cool AI tools out there that you can use to do that with. So it doesn't mean you have to be spending hours and hours every day. You can literally spend 15 minutes and comment on 15 profiles using the right tools. And if you are commenting on other people's profiles and you're commenting thoughtfully, not like, hey, nice post,
Right.
right? But really, I resonated with that. This reminds me of whatever, just give your opinion. Then what happens is that person who wrote the post and is seeing the comment very likely is going to go look over at your profile and say, who is this person that actually is, taking the time? And even if they don't connect with you, okay, they will follow you if you're in creator mode. And if you're using the premium or a sales nav, you'll be able to see that they actually looked at your profile. So it's a way to build relationships. It's, would you ever walk into a bank and say, excuse me, I'd like to withdraw $1,000. And they're like, you never made a deposit.
Right.
We don't see that you've ever done anything here, so we can't give you any money. Well, the same thing, and it's all about being repetitive. So you want to make sure that you are, constantly commenting and reposting and sharing there, because that helps them. When somebody shares your post, then it gets seen by more people, right?
Yeah.
So I think that one of the biggest things that people forget is you always have to give first. So write those thoughtful comments. If you think it's worthwhile, reshare it, repost it with your comments and say why you're resharing that post.
Now that you're listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast, are you subscribed to the Mid-Career GPS newsletter? This is my twice weekly newsletter to help you get the career clarity you need to find that new job or level up your leadership as you navigate toward whatever is next for you and your career. Be the first to hear about upcoming webinars and events, along with other things to help you build your mid-career GPS. It's a free newsletter, and you can join by visiting my website at johnneral.com. Check the show notes or my LinkedIn. Now, back to the episode. You always drill home the point about giving first and being a great connection on LinkedIn by adding value with thoughtful comments like you just shared. But one of the other things you talk about is a strategy that you use called Give Five to Get Five in regards of LinkedIn recommendations. And we know that for active job seekers, a really good hiring manager or recruiter is going to land on your profile. And as they stay engaged and interested in your profile, they're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And they're going to look at what you've written about other people and what people have written about you. Can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of giving recommendations first before asking for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I use the analogy that when somebody sends me a recommendation that I'm not expecting, it's like, it's the equivalent of like getting out of your car and looking down and finding a $20 bill on the ground. It's like, wow, this is amazing, right? When somebody sends you a recommendation, and it's very heartfelt and it's really speaking to how you help them. It makes you top of mind. So if every day all you did was just send just one recommendation to somebody in your network to tell them how they've impacted you, whether it was a session that you listened to that they, gave, maybe it was a podcast that you listened to, or maybe you just had a get to know you session and somebody gave you a great tip about something. Writing a recommendation, of course, if it's a client or somebody that you've worked with and they got great results, That's really awesome. And every day, just make it a practice. You brush your teeth every day. Why not just make it a practice to give a recommendation every day? It will come back to you tenfold. And I don't recommend that the people that you give them to are the ones that you ask from. Because if you look at, received and given, and you see that it's the same person, it really causes you to step back and say, is this genuine? Like, did I just give you one so you'd give me one? So you really, and in some cases that's the case because you become clients of each other, but you want to be careful of the dates because they really do kind of sit side by side.
Mhm.
And you really want to make sure that when you are giving them, you're giving them from the heart because
Right.
they really have helped you in some way. They've made your life a little bit better in one way or another.
Mhm. Yeah. And for anybody out there who is looking at finding a new job this year or they're planning on starting a job search, take a look at the recommendations that are on your profile. They're more than a couple years old, if they're outdated, if the last recommendation you received was from 2008, start giving some recommendations and you'll start building some recommendations on your own that'll be more current and valuable in that regard.
Yeah, and don't
So,
be afraid to ask for the
yeah,
recommendations. That's the other thing. I mean, giving is one thing, but it's okay to ask. Get in touch with those people and say, I've just been really delinquent. I haven't really paid much attention to LinkedIn. And now I'm really building it back up. Remember when we worked together, you said XYZ. I'd love your help. Would you mind writing a recommendation for me? And sometimes it means you have to actually send them an email or a phone call because they may not be paying that much attention to LinkedIn. So in order to get them to write that recommendation, you are asking for something. So you've just got to step a little bit further outside to make sure that and one of the things that I really believe is when you use the word because, people tend to respond. So think about this. Have you ever been in line in the supermarket and the person in front of you has a basket that's just filled to the top and you've got two items? You ran in for milk and bread, right? And your husband's waiting in the car and you're on your way to someplace and you say to the person in front, "Oh, excuse me, I only have two items. Would you mind if I go in front of you?" They may or may not let you. But if you say, "Excuse me, I only have two items. I see you have a full basket. My husband's waiting in the car. We're actually late to go to a doctor's appointment. Would you mind if you let me?" 99% of the time, they're going to say yes. But if you don't give them a because, not as great a likelihood that they're going to say yes. So when you're asking for that recommendation, you say, I listened to a podcast. I've been working with a LinkedIn specialist, and I was told that it's really important for me to have recommendations. And I know you've already said these great things about me. It would mean the world to me because I really need to up level my credibility. Would you mind writing a recommendation for me? The odds of them doing it are so much greater because you gave them a
absolutely.
reason.
Yeah. Now, to your point about the analogy in the supermarket, my follow-up question to them is you're not paying for this with all your spare change in your pocket or your purse, are you? Because that frosts my cupcake. I did
Yeah.
something nice for you. Move this along pretty quickly. Exactly. Rhonda, we're going to start wrapping up here in a moment, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you if LinkedIn jail still exists.
Oh, it does. People are, yeah, stay away from the automation, play by the rules. LinkedIn is not, they're owned by Microsoft, right?
Mhm.
You're not going to go up against a giant. You want to make sure that you abide by the rules and what their regulations are and they're getting stricter and stricter. They're actually eliminating a lot of accounts. So one of the things that I get asked often is LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to verify your account, which means you send them your government ID. And I think it's a great idea because you know what? If you've gone through the trouble and you've done that, that says, hey, I'm a real person and I don't care if LinkedIn is going to verify me. So that's one of the things that I recommend people do. There are people that have other opinions about it. But again, I'm on there for business.
Right.
I'm looking to give people business. I'm looking to generate business. So I want you to know that, you know what, I am a real person and I don't care if LinkedIn has my ID. It
Yeah.
just gives you more confidence that, I am the real deal.
Right. Yeah. it is something that people do need to be aware of. And so especially if you're trying to build your account, get to those 500 connections, don't just randomly start clicking on people looking to connect, because that's a surefire way to get flagged as being a bot or something like that. Um, Rhonda, I could talk to you for hours, and we'll have to have you back on at some point. But as we start wrapping up here, what advice would you give people to help them build their mid-career GPS, specifically on how they can use LinkedIn in one way to help them build their GPS?
I would actually tell them, and I'm sure you tell this to your clients, John, take inventory of everything you've done. Because, most people forget. When I had to go through and list how many podcasts I'd been on, I was shocked at the number that I'd been on because I forgot. I literally have forgotten. So I would say do an internal inventory. Look at all of the things that you've accomplished, because really what you're doing today is how you've built up from the past. We all changed careers somewhere along the way. Right. I didn't grow up and say, oh, yeah, I want to be a LinkedIn strategist. That was
Mhm.
not what I thought when I
Sure.
was growing up. Right. I actually thought I wanted to be a lawyer. So, what you really want to do is take that internal inventory and tell a story so that when somebody's reading it, it makes sense of why you're doing what you're doing. Right. What you're really looking to do is instill confidence in the person that's going to hire you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, very well said. So thank you. Well, my friend, I want to turn the mic over to you because you've got some exciting things to share with us. So please let us know where people can connect with you and what great things you have coming up.
So I'm super excited because I actually have a masterclass slash boot camp that's coming up, which people can learn everything they need to know on how to create that optimized profile by themselves. It's a do it yourself. And, certainly there are people that want help and they want, me or somebody else to do it for them. But you know what? If you actually have all the tools that you need, you can do that. So the masterclass is called perfectyourprofile.com, or you could just go to theshermethod.com and you'll see it on there. And there's two ways. So number one, you can actually get all the recordings. It's all there. It's actually unedited. So you get to see the Q&A, there's a community, there's everything that you need, and you can just go through it at your own pace. Or you can join us live. It's going to be on May 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th, where again, it's the same class, but you get the live interaction. So either way, and that's where you find it on theshermethod.com.
Right. And just to clarify, it's March 12th, 13th, and 14th.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I think I heard you say May, so I just want to make
Oh, well,
sure we
sorry.
get
Oh,
that.
thanks for catching that.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's
March
March.
12th through the 14th, everybody. Rhonda hosts an incredible masterclass. You will walk away with so much information. I will make sure all of that is listed in the show notes, and especially people can connect with you on LinkedIn, and would love for them to do so because you share such motivational and inspirational and really helpful tips. So Rhonda Sher, thank you so much for being an incredible guest on the Mid Career GPS podcast. My life and my business are better because I know you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, John. I so appreciate you.
Same. Well, my friends, if there is one big takeaway, I'm going to take you back to the top of this conversation. When Rhonda was sharing her story with all of us, she said she has a superpower. What's yours? When you think about who you help and what you help them do, and you think about your unique professional value that you add to your organization, your team, your leadership, whatever that might be, what is your superpower? And how well is that communicated in all of your branding documents, specifically on your LinkedIn? Does your LinkedIn talk about the results you've achieved, how you're going to help somebody? Think about some of the things that we talked about today. Make sure to check out Rhonda's masterclass. And most importantly, use LinkedIn as a way to connect and engage and be of value and service to people in your network. I guarantee you, you will not regret it. So until next time, my friends, remember this: you will build your mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how you show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnnerrell.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.